Here we are in the premium version of our underwriting application. In this case, we're using premium data from our partners, including Address Space Plus from the Ordnance Survey, Parcel Info from LandClan, which are land and property extension for Esri, and detailed flood risk maps from JBA. All of our data partners provide data in ready-to-use formats across ArcGIS, which allow you to start using them in your analysis. If we take a look starting with Address Space, if I click on one of my policyholders, I can realize that I have detailed attribution about the specific address and more to help us locate accurately each of our policyholders as well as the buildings around them. In addition, if I turn on the Policyholder Buildings tab here, and I zoom in on one of my policyholders, now I can see that I have a detailed building outline, so the building footprint, and potentially the land title that it sits atop. I'm getting this data from LandClan, which provide these accurate building footprints, parcel footprints, and information about each of the buildings and parcels, such as EPCC ratings, UPRNs, and ownership. This is really useful because then we can start to build up a historic perspective of each of our buildings and know that we have that comprehensive and accurate geometries. In addition, we're working with the JBA flood risk data, which allows us to see different flooding scenarios, including a quite common, like 75-year flood returns, as well as greater flood returns, so a 1 in 200-year flood or 1 in 1,000-year flood, not only for surface flooding, but also for river flooding as well. So let's zoom out and take a look at the river here and how it'll be affected in different scenarios. So if I turn on a 200-year flood risk, we can see a greater percentage of the city gets flooded. If we turn on 1,000, we can see that has a drastic impact across all of our policyholders. So this is a way that we can start to enhance our analysis with the premium data. Now let's take a look at how we can use this data to help make better decisions as we analyze each of our policyholders. In this case, I've created a simple swipe tool on the map, which shows the difference between treating each of our policyholders as a point on the map versus the actual building that they sit under. So in this case, we can see the points in blue versus the accurate building data and parcel data that we get from LandClan. This is really important because it allows us to see how the specific flooding scenarios affect both the buildings and the parcels that they sit atop. Here we can see a policyholder who will have a quite different premium and different risk factors if we evaluate their policy and their home as just a point on a map versus its actual footprint and the parcel it sits atop. In this case, if we're going to select just the point, we can see that the point actually falls outside the flood risk zones. And because of this, that is a low river flood factor in our calculations, and we would just say it requires basic coverage with a premium of £243. However, if we have the parcel information and the building footprint information, we can see that the building actually overlaps most of this flood zone in a 1 in 200-year flood and in a 1 in 1,000-year flood. Because of this, it will require enhanced coverage with a premium of £287. And that's just one example of showing why just having a point on a map might not be enough. Buildings drastically differ in their size, in their parcel, and what other factors might affect them spatially. In this case, these two big buildings here aren't represented well by just a small point on a map, but rather we need their full footprint in order to understand how they'll be affected in various flood risk scenarios. Having the detailed information from JBA, Address Space, and LandClan allow us to start to build up this information and allow us to start understanding an appropriate spatial underwriting model that we can then use to evaluate new properties. So if we get a new list of properties from one of our providers, we can go ahead and score them according to the underwriting model we've developed against the premium data. So if I set this as my analysis input into a custom web tool, I can go ahead and join up that model to the new data on the map and go ahead and run this so we can score these new properties. This will take a moment, but I've got one that I've prepared earlier, which shows the type of information we can return against each of our new potential policyholders. Here we can see we've got that information from Address Space about where it's located, as well as a recommended premium based off a rate adjustment based off the risk factors and all of the premium data sets that we saw previously. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what's possible across ArcGIS in combination with our premium data providers for insurance, such as the Ordnance Survey, LandClan, and JBA. If you have any questions about how to develop a spatial underwriting application or using these premium data sets, please feel free to reach out to us at sales@esrauk.com.